Hey, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some more Cosmonarchy. That is, of course, what happens on this channel. Cosmonarchy happens. I'm Protogo, bringing you another match here between, this time around, ArbuzBudesh versus Krankendau. I thought maybe Krankendau deserved some, liberation, some redemption, and so he's playing Zerg in this particular game. We're going to take a look at this replay and see what Arbuz is up to in this particular matchup. And it looks like it'll be a lattice opener, which already gives us a little thing to talk about. Well, it is going to be a pool start for Krankendau, as opposed to the typical Larvosk that you've seen a lot of the Zerg players doing. So I wonder if there's some kind of early aggression the Protoss have been doing to shut off that Larvosk first, which does give you 2 extra larvae in the long run compared to a typical pool into Larvosk. So that's something that does obviously spike your eco a little bit, but your first military unit comes online way later. So it's possible that maybe this is a response to this very build, this lattice opener here by Arbuz. Either way, thanks for joining us for Cosmonarchy while we get into the swing of things and talk a little bit about these players, these builds, and the active tournament that we got going on. I'm just going to take a moment to draw your attention to the top right, where we have a $300 goal for adding more funding to the Acropolis 4 prize pool. Anything extra above that goal will probably go to Acropolis 5 or some other tournament like Weekend Wage. We already have a Weekend Wage that's funded and ready to go. So that'll be what we jump back into following the tournaments. The Acropolis Throne Room stage that we got going on. Arbuz is participating in the Throne Room stage, and so he will be facing off his next match actually against AUD64, a Protoss player. So he doesn't get much value from fighting Zerg right in this moment, but it might give him some ideas, some positive ideas of what to do if he rolls Zerg, as he's playing Protoss and Zerg in that tournament. If he rolls Zerg against AUD's Protoss, he might remember stuff like this. And otherwise, it's just pretty cool to see what his Protoss is looking like in general. So he first moves a Simulacrum across the map, which is maybe a little bit worse for wear, since he immediately gets caught, and his timer there on the reaction is maybe a little bit lackluster. But Krankendau actually wanted to move across the map instead of killing that unit, and I kind of see why. He wants to use his early units to actually get some damage done. He is, of course, at a pretty steep worker deficit, only now getting his secondary Larvosk. So the Lattice gives you units that should be pretty reasonable versus these initial Zeths, but obviously it's going to take a little bit of time before they can really build up to a good number. And the Rogue Gallery is attempted to be turned down, but honestly it has way more HP than the Lattice does, and so not really a good choice of target there. But Crank is just trying to apply some pressure with them. I suppose he's definitely keeping this army at home, which does help in some ways. But it's, it could be a little bit better for him. During this time, of course, Krankendau knows there's no threat from incoming enemy units. The Sims would never have done any enough damage versus the Quas. So he doesn't actually need to do anything other than make workers. He can kind of catch up a little bit. But he is starting to make some more Zeths now, and the Vornath is about a quarter of the way complete, so we will be seeing those upgraded Zethra cores. Arbuz, knowing that his attack timing is over, for a couple of reasons we'll talk about in a moment, is going to choose to put down his expansion, which I do like a lot as a choice, and see what tech he wants to develop from there. The reason why you don't really want to bother going into an attack here as the Protoss is because of exactly what Krankendau is doing. You do want to be able to apply a little bit of pressure, maybe send 1 or 2 units out to confirm that this is exactly what's happening, because if the Zerg was just drolling the whole time, making a bunch of workers ecoing the whole time, shall we say, then that would definitely be a booming moment for the Zerg, and the Protoss would be caught a little bit slipping, because they do not scale their economy as fast as the Zerg does. So, of course, if Krankendau is, what are these? Let's see. Let's count them. We have 5 larvae that were used on Zeths. Oh, actually, a little bit more than that. It looks like about 7 larvae were used for Zergling equivalents here, the Zethra cores, which then many of them turned into the Vorver core, which is an upgraded unit with armor, more health, and an ensnaring attack that also runs some armor. Meanwhile, we got the Quas that were already pre-made, so I don't really count those. But 7 larvae could have been 7 more workers, could have been, obviously, Krankendau much further ahead in the economic game. Now he's going to charge across the map instead, and Arbuz has built up a good number of idols, so defensively, he's okay. These little dwarf-looking dudes that, fantasy dwarf, of course, obviously rocking out with their robotics legit setup there, modeled by Delta Catamus. Shout out him. They do this double shot here. It does do some splash damage. Krankendau's going to go for the attack anyway. This feels a little bit ill-advised for me, because the Vagrants are here, and they do have a double life where the secondary life has timed life, but as you can see, they're holding their own for now. The idols are going to maybe get routed, but those Quas are going to have a really struggle some time actually clearing out a lot of this stuff, and Arbuz is going to fall all the way back to his main base, but there's not really any danger for his workers. He can't kill the Rogue Gallery no matter how hard he tries. and there just isn't really enough there. The idols do end up actually mostly going down, but as much as it's a tight hold and a couple of workers do go down with Krankendau taking the lead economically, this doesn't really have felt like it was exactly what Krankendau wanted to accomplish with that. Mostly because the prostration stage is already coming down, so the extra tier of tech is coming, and well, Krankendau didn't really set the economy back so far that you can at least make a pariah when this finishes. So that's probably the unit that we're going to be seeing here. Arbuz is spending down his cash to queue up a couple extra military units and stuff, so I suppose maybe that was enough of a chaos that Arbuz is going to take a little bit before he actually affords his first pariah, but he's going to have it. Yeah, there it is, almost pretty much on the dot. That's kind of what I meant. So he cancels out his Vagrant to afford it, which I think is actually worth it in this situation. You can have your Rogue Gallery be a little bit idle for now. The Barghest here hasn't really gotten too much done, but it scouts the complexion of the Zerg, and this is kind of a pitiful state for the Zerg to be in with no tech development, right? A lot of minerals in the bank. Crank can put down a couple extra macro hatches, but what's he really going to do besides putting 2 of those down here and expanding out his larva production? Is it already a little bit too late for that shutdown here onto the Protoss, right? Because once they get a lot of steady frontliners, splash damage, and the like, you need to alter your composition. The Shroud already on the way. That's kind of what I expected here, where Krankendau would go for the Shroud. You're not going to be able to fight pariahs on, 2-base Zeth Vorv sort of combo. Now, the Barghest will at least be pounced upon, so that is something. But Arbuz should be feeling okay. Oh, a Mind Tyrant! Okay, so that's pretty crafty here from Arbuz. He might be trying to end the game sooner than I suspected. So there's obviously going to be some time before the tech actually comes into play. The Shroud takes some time to ambulate, shall we say. Ardent Authority behind this, so there is a little bit of a transition point where if this attack doesn't work for Arbuz, he can still get some value. But we only have the 2 Vorvs, right? That's going to be plenty here to clear with that. And the Pariah is going to definitely get some value. So that red overlay there, briefly, was an attack speed increase as those units are going to be consumed for the purpose of it. Those corpses are going to be consumed. The Vorv does rend the armor a little bit, and the Pariah does have to fall back now. But it's already been a good amount of damage dealt by it, and it looks like he will go down to the circuit. So good static defense here from Krankendau. The thing I was debating is whether or not that Pariah was actually meant to attack with the Mind Tyrant in concert, or if the Ardent Authority is actually going to be the sort of wink and nod into that mind control play, because the Mind Tyrant, the Dark Archon equivalent here, has a very, very powerful ability to declare one unit its Malefactor, empowering it to have an overshield equivalent to the amount of energy the Mind Tyrant has. And as long as the Mind Tyrant does in fact have energy, it will spend that energy every time its Malefactor gets a kill or contributes to the unit's death, and it will become mind-controlled and serve its new master. So a very powerful unit that kind of is a force multiplier unto itself while also increasing its durability. You can do this to artillery if you want to try to be, more min-maxing and safe, but the more direct route of splash damaging a lot of units and being able to successfully dominate the battlefield en masse is obviously to do so on a frontliner like a Pariah that has splash damage anyway. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, at this point, Krankendau is held just fine. But if that Mind Tyrant timing had hit a little bit sooner with that Pariah, you could imagine all of those pool units would have been in a different spot, right? Now, thankfully, the buildings are immune to mind control in this particular case, so you didn't have the potential for the circuits to start turning, but definitely something you got to watch out for as Zerg. Now, third base is on the way for the Protoss, ahead of schedule here compared to the Zerg player. It's actually a Positron that gets the Malefactor, a cute move that I have seen done before, particularly by Sausage. I think it was even how he defeated Grass Eater in a pretty tight series some time ago, all the way back in the Acropolis 3 meta. Might have been how one of the things that contributed to Grass Eater not making it into Acropolis 3, no less. And the reason for it is it debuffs a lot of different units because it hits a lot of different units with its attack, but it by itself does not actually kill a lot of units, and almost immediately it's going to get Dovin on here. As you can see, the Overshield's already burned, so it needs to fall back. He's controlled a couple of Vorvs that almost immediately get busted, and so not really the end of the world there for our Zerg player. But the Mind Tyrant's regenerating its energy. That means more shield and also more mind control for the Protoss player. Not really what they want in this moment is to go up against a lot of pool units, right? Because you burn through the Mind Tyrant energy a lot very, very quickly. But it's a cool idea. It's something that I think is worth exploring for the Protoss, and particularly if it was a bunch of Hydras or higher value units like Zoryus on the front line. Actually, only now is Krankendau even bothering with Zoryus, but if this attack had come and Arbuz was able to steal a couple of those bad puppies, or maybe even, worst case scenario for the Protoss in some ways, the evolved Shroud came in, and suddenly you had the Ultra Cores come out. Well, Mind Control could be a proper counter to that in theory, so It's a possibility. Right about now, though, the Lake is flank from the east is forcing Arbuz's hand. He needs to move over to the left-hand side. His units are getting chewed up over here on the right, and that means that the Mine Tyrant does meet its end. Now, the Pariah is somehow staying alive. We've got a lot of dead Vagrants that are waiting to topple over, and there was no detection here for Arbuz, but I think maybe Krankendau just didn't quite have the right constellation of units to successfully clear that attack force. Everything to the west was a good move from Arbuz. He kind of just dove most of his units away from the Lakis stack, and then most of the Lakis were kind of shooting spines all over the place. When you're right on top of them, you can really reduce their amount of damage that is coming out. So that's a dead third base. Definitely a good move for the Protoss to be in that kind of position. We got a lot of Zets coming around, but these Lakis, these Zoryus, they're not really going to be able to do too much. They're so far away, even from this attack, that it feels like the Protoss is still going to have a reasonable army on the other side of the map, and that is going to stop Krankendau from moving across with all of his Zets. Look at this base. If that had been 22 Zetracors attacking this base, or those Zoryus Lakis we saw, he could probably stop this base from mining at the very least, if not just outright tear it down. But instead, he has to recommit to clearing this ball of units, because the first time he attacked with his whole army, it didn't quite do the trick. And the second time, he attacked with only part of his army to try to clean up the fodder, while still having tempo on the map. Krankendau struggling to actually make it happen. He's going to have to borrow those Lakis. There's already a Witness on play, though, so at the very least for the Protoss, they can try to attack from a range. The Cantors have started to come out onto the battlefield and crawl towards a potential victory, but it's a little bit too early to call, as that third base is reset. But this is where the pièce de résistance starts to take shape, right? Arbuz going for the Ancestral Archives. We're talking about a Tier 4 structure here. Protoss the only race with Tier 4. Of course, some Protoss players will say that they don't actually have Tier 4, they just have Tier 3, but it's called Tier 4 and it's priced, it's more expensive. However, it's a very, very powerful set of units from the Ancestral Archives. Honestly, a lot of their units end up being pretty powerful regardless of tier. And you're going to see things like Optectons, these big striders that are good, excellent artillery units. Great fodder for Mine Tyrants to join up with as malefactors. But overall, as the fourth base starts to come undone here, thanks to that Zetracor being a heckler, I'm pretty sure we're also going to see like Archons or Patriarchs, units that you're going to want for a sustained engagement, particularly the Patriarch with its shield sustain. A couple of units waypointed down to start that Nexus from taking too much heckle damage. And Krankendau has a pretty sizable blob of units now. Mostly Zetracors. Remember the splash damage we were talking about. Cantors are here. We still get Positrons and Idols. The three Pariahs with this army feel like you can throw infinity Zeths at that problem and not be able to quite solve it. But army positioning can play a huge part in this, so we'll see how that one takes shape. It's an impressive amount of units, but the units themselves are not very impressive, if that makes any sense. Though Krankendau is looking a little bit like a Nebelheim Zerg back in the day, if you guys are watching long enough to know what I'm talking about there. There's units all over the map patrolling everywhere, trying to find every base. A double expand from Arbuz, and it does look like Krank is eyeing up the same base on the cross spawn. So as 9 o'clock comes up, about halfway complete on that Nexus, the Zerg army is trying to move forward to descend upon the Protoss, and of course, it's looking very scary indeed. How do you kill all this Zerg, dude? Tell me that. Obviously, 3 o'clock still has not been garrisoned just yet. Krankendau focusing all of his efforts and attention, his APM on this fight here and now. The Cantors are isolated off to the right-hand side, but they are not being focused down by any amount of damage. Look at the bloodbath before our very eyes. The Lake is caught unaware up top as Krankendau tries to surround the 9 o'clock Nexus, but look, the army is still good, and the Zets, they can't clear the one champion Pariah playing bodyguard, and that's what I meant when I said the army's huge, the units are not particularly sizable, at least not in their threat. Man, there were a lot of Lakis in that fight. I bet you 90% of players looked at that and said, well, the Protoss is dead here. Look, 139 units being, you know, actually being leveraged against like 30-something. Well, it turns out you don't need much more than that. Optecton is on the way here, about a quarter of the way complete. We got Wardens and a Bulwark coming online here at the 6 o'clock. A band of Zets do get sent down, but I'm not quite sure it's enough. And yeah, I mean, it's a little optimistic to try to kill the Nexus here, but Krank is just busy trying to spend down his money. He ends up making 9 Lyras. He's got a lot of Larva Float. Not sure what else he must have spent his money on more recently. Yeah, it's a lot of Lyras. Lakis, I suppose, another round of those. He's got a lot of units. You can't do anything other than admit, yeah, dude, Crank has a lot of money, a lot of units. But ultimately, Protoss obviously far outstripping his capabilities, starting to mine the gas here at the 6 o'clock, mining the gas at the 9 o'clock. So we're on 3 base minerals. Oh my god, there's so many workers idle here at the 3rd base. 3 base minerals for Arbuz, but 5 base gas. It's kind of wild. So the Tecton, of course, is going to have some time to arm its attacks and stuff. So yeah, you're going to see that kind of thing a lot. Where they start up their attack and then the unit dies first. But they will provide a lot of value, and of course the Mine Tyrant is there to provide the Malefactor. This overlay just indicates that the Mine Tyrant is out of range, effective range of the unit. So if he wants to actually mind control some of these guys, he's going to have to do it a little bit differently. But the Lyrilusks in the lake is trying again to break this position. I like that Krankendau sending an attack force of Quaz Lyra with 1 Zoryus. See if he can kill 6 o'clock. This could be a nice uppercut moment for him. Mine Tyrant is here to help that Tecton provide a lot of value to the Protoss army. The Bulwark, oh man, it's healing so many shields for the Nexus here. Just make more workers, man, that's all you need. But it does look like the space is going to fall. Elsewhere, it seems like 6 o'clock has held, so no break on the 4th base, just on the 5th. And now the Acantors are going to try their best to reign supreme. But listen, fundamentally, that was a good move for the Zerg. If he can actually get more bases up, well, maybe Krankendau will have some more value here very soon. No power field here. The Nexus provides power in Cosmonarchy, so when that goes down and there's no pylon, there's no way for these static defense structures to aid in the defense. And the Pariah runs behind enemy lines. Illegal move. Those Lakers end up tailing it out of there. We do have 12 o'clock coming up here as the extra expansion. Workers rotating down to the same position that just got cleared. Arbuz still has not found, what, 11 workers there? That's pretty entertaining. A lot of more Tectons where that came from over here at the ramp. So you got to watch out for that. Oh, man, 12 Calculusks on the way. 22 pairs of Zeths. Okay, now we're starting to get into territory where I can maybe believe in a Zerg comeback a little bit, because that move over here was very good army movement overall, and I do love that he also forced the issue. It wasn't quite enough to break this base without any reinforcements, and so Arbuz does end up spending a lot of his resources on that, but it works out. It ends up being worth it in that case to save his base without him having to reinforce it with any actual combatants. Man, how has he not noticed all these workers? Just doesn't look at that base anymore, dude. He doesn't need it. But yeah, overall, a second Ancestral coming. We've got a Crucible already empowering it and only it. No, yeah, who needs anything for the Rogue Gallery? Charlatan's starting to come out. I love it. We're even seeing a Potentate. That's totally not a misbuy, guys. He can reset the 9 o'clock, but, I mean, he could reset the 9 o'clock. Oh my goodness. Arbuz. Just adding more and more wherever he can. Thinking about what he wants to add in next. Ah, Synthetic Sign-Off. Okay. All right. Well, he's stepping forward with some of his army, but yeah, once he sees the Calculusks, he's going to need to rethink his composition a little bit. Obviously, Pariahs can attack ground and air, but Tectons can only attack ground. And, well, I guess he's got Manifolds and Sims. That's it. He doesn't really have a lot that's going to shoot up. So he catches wind of that. I think you need to start thinking about Patriarchs from the Ancestral. And indeed, he even queued one up, so there is that. Still plenty of idle workers here in these bases, but I guess he found workers somewhere else. Transfer them from other bases, perhaps. More static defense being set up. I do believe that this is a good move for the Protoss players to do, just because it does buy time for their slow-ass armies to rotate over where they need to be. Krankendau has several little groups of Zerg all over the place. The Witness is over here and sees the Kagris, so I'm kind of surprised Krankendau hasn't been attacked in that location, right? Another Witness in the middle of the map. Good coverage overall from Arbuz, sort of keeping tabs on where his opponent is. The Zeth's obviously on patrol. They're going to end up catching the, I think, first recorded history of these bases being taken, by the way. I'm pretty sure. It's kind of hard to think of them in any other way. Now, a couple of units are bandying about here as well from Arbuz, but he's just going to be clearing out the random guards, as we do indeed have the Ulgorg halfway complete now. Crank has enough money to go tier 2, but he wants to save his money so that he can make a lot of Lyrilusks and maybe a lot of Ultra Cores after. He's got a huge amount of gas. So, rotating around, trying to go for the Omega Surround. If the rocks are sharp enough, you'll gore yourself every which way. If you can pound the stone with blood, then maybe that'll be enough for victory. We have a huge string of Zeths being waypointed to the bottom right. They're not going to find that much over there. Not much of value, but I suppose better than allowing the base to be set up in general. Some units from Arbuz that were stolen from Krankendau being shellacked a little bit, and it's a pretty big surround being attempted, but the Optectons and the Acantors combining to just kind of hit these units off to the side. That's a pretty big hit from the Patriarch as well to slow down some of those units. So instead, Arbuz's base at the 9 o'clock is going to be committed upon by this western spoke from Krankendau. The flank comes in onto the base. This does give up a pretty significant amount of his military committed to taking down that base. And only now do we have any Ultra Cores being gestated behind enemy lines or not. They're right in front, actually. I don't think they're going to have any chance of hatching anytime soon. And Lakes are being stolen by the Malefactor. Man, it's unreal. He's added in just a few Patriarchs, and it's enough to help deal with those Calculisks, which by themselves just don't deal with armor very well. Where's those burrows coming in from that Lakes? That's what I want to know. Doesn't really seem like the Lakes count is high enough. And it doesn't even look like 9 o'clock got broken. Instead, the army, what remains of it, start to filter out away from that line. Man, there's so many Optectons. Oh, the Acantor shells are enormous, too. And they're very good at dealing with those Ultra Cores. GG has to be called. Indeed, he was gored on the rocks that he tried to overwhelm with his flank. But that was not enough. Arbuz versus Crank ended up being a pretty cool match after all. Well, GG's, lads. It was a nice 21-minute appetizer there. I'm headed out for dinner, and I hope you guys have a good meal yourselves. We'll be raising that money for Acropolis. That's streamlabs.com/pronago if you want to donate towards it, or you can donate via our Cosmonarchy link there in the bottom right, coffee.com/Cosmonarchy. I'll see you guys for another video tomorrow. Peace.